Alright, so today, taking the old Honda out for a ride. It's a nice little ride. Need to go get gas first, because I'm an asshole, and I did not leave myself enough gas last time I took it out. But yeah, she's a 1978 CB750K. I'll tell you a little bit more about it once I'm out on the road and full of gas. Thanks. So I bought it in the beginning of 2016 and spent the next 2 years putting it together, getting it back on the road. Hadn't been on the road since about 1996. And as I started to dig into things, I realized that this was essentially a rolling titled parts bike. There had been a lot taken off of this thing, from the floats in the carburetors to the lights, the wiring harness that's inside the gauges, that was gone. Really the only things that are original on this motorcycle at this point are the frame, the gas tank, which was in immaculate condition surprisingly, and I'm assuming it's the original. It's the gas tank that came with the bike. But everything else, from the front brake caliper to the rear tail light, there's a lot that was new. So that took, this was a $500 Craigslist purchase, and yeah, I didn't get out of this thing too cheaply. So because of that, I don't think I'm getting rid of this bike anytime soon. But it was a fun project. It took me until April of 2017 to get it all sorted out. And then one of the test rides out of the neighborhood, yeah, I got a really bad rod knock. So all I did was check out the top end of the bike. Kind of felt like it looked like the primary chain was in spec, like pretty close to being out of spec, but then you kind of realize right away why this thing was kind of set up in someone's shed for almost 20 years. That rod knock probably happened to somebody and they parked it, they didn't want to deal with it. So I started looking around eBay and all these types of places trying to find a used engine. I found this kid in Ohio. He had probably a dozen project bikes, probably 24 engines from Hondas and Triumphs and all kinds of shit. Yeah, this place, like, if I had found it after getting a bonus or something, I would have bought lots of things there. But unfortunately, the only thing in the cards at that time was getting a motor that he said had good compression. As I had my Summer of George, I went ahead and got it running, put a few hundred miles on it, had a nice time with it. So to go front to back, new to me, new to this bike, front brake caliper. Back from there, I put on a fiberglass fender. I'm not gonna be one of these hipster scum that run around without a fucking fender on their bike, because how else am I gonna keep my hipster motorcycle that's clean without a front fender? You know what I'm saying? So that was something I wanted to do. This is actually a new old set of clocks on there. There's a lot of things for these bikes. You can still buy new, find new old stock, but the stupid wiring harness for the light bulbs that go inside the gauges, it was almost as expensive to find those as it was to get a decent set of gauges, used gauges. So that's what I did. New handlebars. Those are super bike bars. They're just some cheaper ones from Diamond City. Nothing special. It had the kind of original, like, this is that period in the late 70s where the Japanese bikes were trying to play with like cruiser aesthetics. So I had these like almost wide buckhorn bars, but I had them on here for a little while last summer and I did not like them at all. It's a really awkward riding position. We got these nearly pointless bar end mirrors, but they make me legal in New Jersey. New master cylinder. I tried for 2 weeks trying to get the original one rebuilt, but I couldn't get the damn circlip off of there. So, then in a bout of frustration, somehow the original one ended up flying across the garage. So, I didn't figure it was worth rebuilding at that point. Found one of those companies on eBay that makes seats custom for the bike. It was a little bit pricey and it took like 6 weeks to get it, but I like it. It's not the most comfortable thing. Underneath me, new set of, well, new. I use the term new loosely. And essentially a new set of used carburetors that were in pretty decent shape. Just cleaned them up a little bit, didn't need a full rebuild. Moving back from there, oil tank is the original, so that's something original. And all of the electronics have been upgraded. Regulators, rectifiers, to the all that stuff. Actually, it's on the second regulator. I think I cooked it once. That's a long story. Not a long story. It's an embarrassing story. When people say it's a long story, they usually mean it's an embarrassing story. So, I'll go into that. So, it was probably late summer in 2016. I decided I was going to take a few moments and try to get the engine actually running. Had the carbs rebuilt, they were good to go. And, I don't want to get this out. So I wanted to get the bike running, and I did. I was successful, except the float valves weren't quite seated very well. So I had the bike kind of the front of it inside the garage. I had a fan blowing on it. You know, I was all ready to go, man. Got it running, and then the overflow from the carbs was going crazy. She was pissing gas everywhere underneath of it, and yeah, so as I alluded to, that little pile of gas decided to catch fire, and one of the little pops and bangs that came out of the exhaust. So that was terrifying, frankly. So I got the fire out, but it cooked a little bit of stuff. From an exhaust perspective, I went with the Del Cavic. I think I got the wrong collector on it. It kind of shoots the muffler out at a weird angle, but you know, for the price, I made it work. It probably affects some lean angle on the right hand side, but it's at an angle where this bike really has no business in going, so that's kind of that. Pretty sure Fredericktown is going to be flooded. We'll know as soon as we get around this bend. Yeah. Yep, turning around and go back up Oldman's Creek Road. Yep, New Jersey's sinking, kids. Climate change is here. Oh, those warehouses that we saw back there, they probably won't be able to exist in 20 years. So, dealing with a couple things right now on the bike. Pretty much all CB750s at some point will develop a leaky valve cover gasket, which doesn't sound like a big deal, except when you consider the only way to really get at that is to pull the motor. So I have that going on. You can see here every once in a while things popping out of gear. Usually somewhere between the fourth gear keeps running out. So I haven't dug in to see if it's the easy fix with the shifter linkage inside, behind one of the engine covers. Just because I don't have the gasket on hand to replace it with. So then that raises the question, if I have to get into the engine, should I just go ahead and rebuild the original engine on here? Which is something I've been wanting to do. There's only a couple times where this thing's actually, put me on the side of the road. The first was when I found out the hard way that I had cooked the regulator rectifier after I got it back on the road. So basically it wasn't allowing the battery to charge, and I made it I think about 0.8 miles from my house when she just quit. So I decided to try to push it back home, and this is when I was still living in Western Pennsylvania. So that meant some hills, and pushing this old girl up some big old hills was not fun at all. So that was a thing. And then the only other time, one time right after I moved back to New Jersey, I was out running around, and the negative battery terminal unscrewed itself from the battery. That wasn't fun. So now probably every other time I go out, I double check that connection. And then the most recent time was back in May of this year. I guess I didn't quite have I think it was right after I put these bars back on. I didn't have the clutch cable properly adjusted, and I pulled it too far. And the way the clutch works in this thing, it goes to an actuator in my right side case, and pulls a lever, and then it goes back behind the cover to this little 3-ball bearing fidget spinner looking doodad that the lever pulls it out of these little pockets, and then that compresses the springs and all that stuff behind it, to make the clutch work. The clutch cable was very improperly adjusted. It's just a little too tight. There was plenty of slack, but the big adjustment down at the clutch housing was way off. And so what happened was, when I must have pulled the clutch in just a little bit further than what I usually do, and it pulled that fidget spinner up so that when I released the clutch lever, it didn't go back in its pocket. So here I was side of the road with disengaged clutch to the point where I could put it in gear all day and it wasn't going to go anywhere. So I got the outside cover off. So there's two covers. An outside cover where the cable comes in, you can see the outside lever. So I was able to loosen that up and wiggle it around until I heard it pop back in place, and then did a quick little adjustment on the side of the road. So that was the most recent time that this bike is kind of, I let the bike down in that case. But yeah, that was the most recent time where something went wrong, and I had to do a field fix on something. So, but yeah, so knock on wood, this has been a fairly reliable bike. It's a Honda, no surprises there, and it's just been a fun bike to ride around. Carnage Asada. If you're going to buy an old bike, which I recommend anyone do, it's if you have a little bit of mechanical inclination. If you want to develop your mechanic skills, your wrench skills, it's a great way to do it. It's not. It can get expensive. Oh, I fucking hate these things. And it's very rewarding. You're not going to be able to get your money out of these bikes. Am I looking for other project bikes right now? Yeah, it's just I'm trying to again decide whether I want to do the rebuild on the original engine of this thing or play with something else. Part of me feels if I can find the right, CB CL 350 or 450, I might prefer to start my vintage racing career on something like that, something smaller and lighter, where there is an incredible amount of racing knowledge, and would eventually, as my skills develop, I can work into a fairly competitive division once I get out of the novice classes. So that would be cool. Or my wife would like to learn how to drive stick shift. So I'm also keeping an eye out for what might be a good, fun classic roadster to ride around in. Whether it's an old Triumph Spitfire, MGB, Fiat 124, Alpha Spider. Just kind of seeing what's out there. Kind of seeing the waters. Fortunately, crazy COVID prices doesn't seem to have overly affected those vehicles. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them out there. They're not rare. They're not particularly good, but they're cool. Just wanted to get this bike out today to stretch your legs, have a little exercise. Because that's the thing about these old bikes. They run better when you keep them running. So I'll probably ride this bike pretty consistently up until it gets really cold here in November, probably late November. No heated grips, no wind protection, so yeah, it gets a little chilly. So yeah, this bike had a pretty nasty rattle can paint job, and when I was bringing the bike home, I didn't realize that the tank wasn't necessarily, affixed properly. There's a little back rubber piece that is usually there to hold it against the frame. And then obviously there's two little nubs up front that the tank sits down into the front side. But yeah, so apparently it came around the bend, and I heard it go clunk, clunk, clunk in the back of the trailer. I'm like, what the fuck was that? So I was pulled over to check my straps anyway, and the seat and the tank just fell off into the trailer, thank goodness. But it left surprisingly, it didn't really dent the tank. That dent there was uncovered after I pulled the paint off, but it wasn't in bad shape. So it had a nice scuff on it. I didn't feel like dealing with the scuff. So I was like, let me strip the paint off, see what I'm dealing with on the outside. Stripped it off. My goodness, it looked badass. So I just started, sanding it down from 80 grit down to, I think, 600. And then for a couple years, I just kept it oiled. Like every once in a while, I'll go out with a green Scotch-Brite pad and some WD-40, kind of massage some oil back into it. Tried using some machine wax, kind of what they use in like table saw tables to keep the rust away, but nothing really worked. What's on here right now is stuff called shark skin. It's a material that they use on pontoon boats, and the pontoons, to keep them looking decent, because most of those are aluminum. They kind of oxidize quickly. So once or twice a year, I'll apply a new coat on there. It keeps it looking half decent. So what I'm probably going to do, maybe this winter, is finally break down and get the tank painted, tank side covers, and get the fenders matched as well. I found a cool, you know, kind of was almost like a gunmetal color that Honda used on some of their cars from the late 70s. So I'd rather go that route than what I have on here. Well, what originally came with it's black. Then there was like a mauve color that was actually kind of cool. Something to go with that, you know, that kind of metallic gunmetal color. And a couple places I can find the original stripe package that was on the tank, which is red and gold. So that had a nice little pop to the dark color. But man, this is just an enjoyable bike to ride. Oh, don't, thank you. Sometimes you can just never trust FedEx or Amazon drivers. Alright, so we're making our way back home. Through the fields and the farms, and hopefully trying to avoid Karens. Heading out to buy mums. So this is a little bit different format for what my dispatches from the Forgotten Quarter are usually about, but I know I couldn't get too far down the road without someone asking about my motorcycles, so this is a great way to introduce my old Honda CB750 and the turn towards home.
Hey everybody, it's Steve McClintock, and thanks again for joining me at that adventure, John, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.